It's there. Oh, welcome. That was weird how it started. Hold on just a moment. I need to switch to the hotspot because I still don't get Wi-Fi in my own house on this computer. All right, we are good. Welcome to my dark dungeon. Probably turn another light on. Just got dark. So, I'm going to do what I've been doing lately, which is turn my video off, share the screen. Oh wow, I just went right over there. Okay. And yeah, I do this. I started doing this like maybe a few weeks ago, and I've had really great results. I don't know. I mean, obviously, you haven't had a reading from me before, but one of my big problems, not problems, but one of the things that I need to change is as my wait list gets longer and people want their readings done, as not judging that, but just I can't be doing 2 hour readings, and that's been my tendency for so long. And somehow, whenever I just get into like a really meditative trance like state, I'm able to do everything I always do, but in a more efficient way. Um, so yeah, it's kind of so like I go I'll like show myself. It really depends on the day. Like walk, like right now I'm walking. Um, helps me think, and sometimes I like to just like sit in front of the computer, stare at the chart, and meditate, which is what I'll do right now. And then sometimes, usually like turn the camera on. It's always random. Sometimes I'll have the camera on the whole time. Sometimes half, sometimes not much. Whatever I'm feeling. Whole point is the reading, isn't it? All right. So let's get going. Did I? Forgot to do that, didn't I? See, 124 yesterday, and I did 115. So like this is like crazy for me. I'm always like 2 hours plus. I'm like, I don't know, just can't do it. All right. Anyways, so let's get down to the reading. So, all right, here we are. We got Aries rising. Um, and it was actually funny. Last night, I started doing your reading. I should probably tell this girl actually. One sec. I need to like send a voice memo really quick. Also, Ashley, I forgot to tell you, like the first 2 minutes, I was gonna do a different chart, but then I saw too many similarities. So like you'll just when you listen to it, you'll know that like I kind of switched up and decided to do yours like last second. So forgot to kind of tell you that. Okay, yeah, because I had yours pulled up last night, um, and then it was just so similar. Like I did 3 readings yesterday, right, which is a lot for me. Um, and like yours would have been or three, actually three and a quarter, 3 and a third even. um, but yeah, yours would have been that last one, and I just couldn't do another one. Like I always have this thing with my clients where like I'll have like super similar charts back to back. It's so crazy. And yours was just another one. It was like I'll get like basically born in 86, and why is it connecting to my iPad? There's a lot of the karmic stuff, outer planets, a lot of the themes that are the same. And yeah, so let me just disconnect from my iPad because somehow it randomly started connecting. We are good. So, anyways, um, there's just like things in common, like very Sagittarian energy. You have your Sag moon. Um, and yeah, I just like and like I had just done like an Aries rising, I'm pretty sure. So and so many Aries North node because there were Aries North node for that year. So, anyways, let's end Jupiter Pisces. Yeah. So let's get into it. So as an Aries rising, Aries and Pisces are the two most rare rising signs apparently, and basically you have a huge advantage when you have the Aries rising because every house aligns perfectly, which check. More lights now. I just need to check if there's a note I made for myself. Okay, doesn't look like it. Okay, so Aries risings have a huge advantage, right? Because the first house for everyone is related to Aries, right? In every chart, it's the house. It's not like each house, all 12 houses, it goes Aries all the way through Pisces. Like some astrologers talk about how they're not exactly the same. Like yeah, there are differences, but like just mainly speaking in general, like the second house is Taurusy, third house is Gemini, fourth house is Cancer, related to Cancer, fifth house Leo, and so forth. So for you, as an Aries rising, Aries being the first sign, you're gonna have every house in your chart align with the natural placement of the chart, the natural alignment of the chart, right? Or of the houses with the signs. So there's like a lot of so for example, your moon is in the ninth house in Sag. Well, guess what the ninth house is? It's the house of Sag. So it kind of like doubles everything. And then if you have a Libra rising, it flips it all backwards because Libra is the opposite sign of Aries. So you have like not really worth talking about here, but you get the point. So um Aries rising and the North Node's in the first house, right? And you have Eris conjunct the ascendant and Vesta conjunct the ascendant. So that's very interesting, that trio. I've never seen that. But basically, Vesta rising right on the ascendant, like right there. Vesta is very much about work, but it's kind of like Saturnish, right? But there's way more fun. It's a way more fun type of work. And to have it in Aries, I think that, a big part of your personality, a big part of who you are is someone with the North Node there who's meant to really blaze new trails karmically. And I said this nodal axis so many times yesterday, I was like, I just can't do it another time, right? But now today I'm refreshed and yeah. But with the South Node in Libra, especially in the seventh house, right? That's the house of Libra, as everything will be in your chart, as I do whole signs. um that I do use whole signs, but I mix in pastas. Anyways, so that is a huge sign. And you have sun square nodes. Interesting. So there's a past life tendency to be very relationship based and to allow relationships um to sort of push away your independence and your sovereignty. So in this life, you are really meant, to go towards this energy of Aries, right? So I always talk about like the polarity of the axis of Libra and Aries. The extreme of Libra, right, is complete codependency. I can't, I'm like the type of people where you ask them how they're doing and it's based off of like whether they're in a relationship or not, right? I know some people. I even have a friend who's like that. Um, and it is definitely, definitely, I don't want to say a sickness, but it's definitely like an addiction to love, or whatever that feeling of love is, right? Or that idea of love. And a lot of times it's rooted in trauma. Anyways, so the Libra South Node in the seventh, it has the tendency to, it's someone who has done a lot. Like one of the things about Libra, right, is that it's so giving and it's so giving and so willing to, I don't want to say sacrificial, but it wants to retain the balance always, right? It always wants the balance to be even. And of course, we know that Libra has a tendency to people please and to put other people over themselves, just so the balance can remain. So when that's done in the relationship arena, one sec. So when that's done in the relationship arena, there can be some like potential codependency stuff. We'll see if there's more in the chart that speaks to that. But just in past lives, the way I look at it is just allowing yourself to be defined by your relationship. So when you're not when when like so I said like the extreme of Libra's codependency, the extreme of Aries is like independence to the point to where the person's not willing to make any compromise and make like I'm doing me, like I don't care. And also aside from that, Libra is very diplomatic. Too far on that side is like someone who, like I said, like people pleases and doesn't have boundaries, has a really hard time saying no. And Aries, the extreme, is just the asshole that doesn't give a shit and that is going to do what they're going to do no matter what, without tact. So it's like it's about blending, using the south nodes of the diplomatic side of Libra, the being able to see different perspectives and all that, but really going towards Aries. So to me, that is a big race towards boundaries, right? It's with the North Node and Aries, and being I said this so many times, but I couldn't do this stream yesterday. Like being okay with being selfish, because like and this isn't saying that you're not meant to be in relationships. I mean, your Pluto in Placidus would be in the seventh house. So it's not that at all. It's more about a reassessment of the types of relationships you want to be in. And that will work for you. Because as a North Node in the first house in Aries, right? So I don't even have to talk about the houses like really with this, but that just like double like someone who really needs to be independent in this lifetime, who needs to be happy doing their own thing. If someone comes, cool. But yeah, like that's really important. Um, Now let's see. Yeah, so finding the right blend of Libra and Aries could be like, yeah, using that the diplomatic and ability to see the other person's perspective, um, but then being very, very like sure, assertive when it comes to your boundaries, especially because like as like think about like the wife who made a bad decision with her marriage and regrets it, but now she has to, and maybe she like the wife who's like maybe like a great artist or something, right? But she never got to explore that side of herself, because she was just like mom, or just like or the wife who gets into a relationship with and is very spiritual, gets in a relationship with someone who's not spiritual, and they have kids, and she's not able to kind of pursue that path, right? So a lot of the Aries North Node stuff in the first house is about self-discovery, right? And about taking risks, and about just doing you, like what, and finding, like really seeking and finding the things that you're passionate about. And as a Sag moon, it connects perfectly. 0 degree Sag moon, right? So that's kind of like the Fool card in tarot, right? Where there's lots of trial and error, and you're very new to that energy. It's fun, right? But there is the very difficult conjunction of Saturn on the moon, which we'll talk about in a second. But so yeah, it would have been like in your Saturn return. After your Saturn return, that a lot would have opened up for you emotionally, most likely. Um, but yeah, so then as a Cancer sun on the IC fourth house, that creates someone who's very, I don't really go into sun signs here. I think people know enough about their sun signs. I say some stuff about them, but it's not like a detailed analysis of a sun sign. But yeah, Cancer, obviously water sign, super sensitive and very homebody-ish. So that's already one like divide. And trust me, like I have I'm also like you. I'm a Pisces, so that's water, and Sag moon like you. So it's and I'm a Leo rising, fire rising. So we have the same thing going on, the same big three kind of connection. Fire ascendants with fire moons and water suns. So I can say 100% that that you like have to feed both mouths. The Cancer mouth that might want to just stay in all day, or just be like a big homebody, more introverted, that might be affected by more, right? It definitely adds like a sensitivity because the sun is like it's who you are, it's your identity. The moon is the emotional undercurrent that rules everything, right? That's why I think the moon is like the most important because you literally like the moon speaks of what you need, not want, what you need to be happy, right? Um and it's the moon, so it's dark, so it can be kind of like hidden, right, from you and from others. So with a Sag moons, it takes one to know one. We need freedom. We need freedom. We need to feel like life is an adventure. We need to gain wisdom. We need to feel like we're growing on that level, right? And sorry about my allergies. I'll probably continue to scratch my face. Actually, I'm gonna go back to sharing how I was. So yeah, Sag moons, like they need that, right? They absolutely need to feel like their life is they're evolving, like they're meeting new teachers or teachings. They also like to, Sag moons all like to feel, different cultures, right? And it's in the ninth house, so that could be a big time attachment to traveling, right? So yeah, that's kind of the need. And sometimes Sag moons find it hard to settle down in one place. And it's a fire sign. So your moon, it's someone who's very passionate about lots of things, right? So sometimes the question becomes, how to, how to just settle on like one or a few, like the kind of jack of all trades, master of none type energy at times. So yeah, it's important to really like because like at the end of the day, Sag, just the energy is all about truth, right? It's all about universal truth and always like updating what your version of truth is. So yeah. So now speaking about that Saturn on your moon, that is rough. First 30 years, people who have Saturn conjunct moon, even like especially in a very like optimistic and spread your wings type energy like Sag, it kind like it throws a wrench in that, and it can make it very like it can add like a Capricorn moon-esque energy, right? And a lot of times people who have Saturn on their moon, they have probably like a lot of times it's their mother. The moon's usually the mother that was quite strict, or just like their early nurturing was not one, it was difficult, right? And maybe they were criticized a lot. um there's a huge range of what could happen, but it usually leads to that individual feeling repressed in terms of like letting their emotions out. So that can be very hard for a Sag moon, right? Because Sag moon, like they're not like Sag moons are just like, we like to have fun, and we like to just say what we want to say. We don't like to like overanalyze everything. um so yeah. Aside from that, I think that Sag, like the Saturn on the moon, can definitely make one a little like yeah, it can just feel like there's like a lot of like um stuck karmic emotional patterns that have to be overcome. Usually in the first 30 years, it gets easier after the Saturn return, right? Um, for that person to be able to really be feel like they can just be like very Sag Moony, like free in that respect. But also, in Sag Moon fashion, the more wisdom that you acquire, the more awareness that you have around this, the better. And it's a conjunction, so it's not a square, it's not an opposition. So at the end of the day, it ends up being a good thing, right? Because Saturn, it's like the strict teacher, right? That's the metaphor I give for Saturn. It's like this that strict teacher that was always a hard ass to you, but really like wanted the best for you. And maybe you don't see it until later, but there's no doubt that they really did want the best for you. So that's kind of the energy of this position. What else can I say about that? So yeah, like it can be really difficult to just like to just like speak your emotions, right? Like and there can also be a level of like depression. That's another thing about which is so crazy to say about like a Sag moon, right? But that's what Saturn can bring, on the moon can bring melancholy. And there's also usually a lot of like defensiveness. People are like this, they're usually quite like cautious emotionally. And sometimes, yeah, it's really very interesting. And I think you got to follow up, which by the way, I'll tell you right now, you can just let me know. Nearly everyone does the following. They get the reading and follow up, or they just get the reading and then but everyone usually ends up adding the follow up if they didn't already with the price at the start, and the current astrology / spiritual alignment reading. And I give you a big discount on that to where it would be, it's usually like 380, but I'd be happy to do it for 270. You just have to remind me that the price I gave you, and instead of so the follow up, which I think you already have, I have to double check. It is an hour where we talk about just the birth chart, where we go over this and we compare your lived experience with everything I say, right? So you should take notes and all that. And then the other current astrology, the same reading, so we're doing it live, right? Obviously, the live follow up, and then we it's just like so that's the first hour, and then it usually takes about 3 hours, sometimes a little bit longer, sometimes less. Lately, I've been more efficient, as I said. But I go over all of your transits, basically so you understand the astrology of the year ahead, year plus, like year ahead, maybe a little more, right? So some people do that with me once a year. I highly I think it's a great thing to understand, because I'm not like a fortune teller. I'm not saying this is gonna happen. You're gonna meet this person. They're gonna make $1 million. It's like more about understanding the weather and the themes that are playing out. And it's always crazy and very synchronistic how it matches up with what the people are saying. And yeah, it's just like I'm not even surprised at this point of the magic that those sessions have. So let me know if you want to do that, and remind me of the price I told you. Okay, back to your reading. Um, so yeah, like there can also be like with Moon Saturn, like taking on guilt or sadness that's not yours. Especially if like the mother was mean towards you when you were young or cold. Um, so the most important thing is building up a feeling of emotional security. Um, because with people who have this, there's this deep urge to feel needed and to feel valued, right? Um, so finding things you can do, right? So when it comes to the ninth house Saturn, a lot of astrologers have that, right? And sometimes it can block. So what can happen is the ninth house Sag, the things you want most are learning, travel, adventure, but Saturn there can block some of those things until the return. I'm not saying completely block them, but like, really block them. Like maybe there's issues with like, finances, or maybe there's a family situation, like who knows, right? So once you had your return, I'm sure like a lot opened up. I think a lot of people with ninth house Saturns, because it can give them a very serious way of like lots of seriousness when it comes to what I call truth, grand truth, right? Um, you know, where do we come from? Where are we going? What's the other one? Where are we now? Or what are we? Where we come from? Where are we going? And just like understanding just like life from different cultural viewpoints and so forth. So yeah, that's really important. Besides that, um, yeah, a lot of people with this like they usually like learn that they couldn't they there's usually some issue with nurturing early on. Um, and sometimes they learn that they couldn't really rely on other people for that, so they start to kind of develop coping mechanisms. Um, because a lot of times they felt like very alone when they're young. Maybe you were like only child or something like that. I'm not sure. Um, you do have Chiron in the third, and that's the house that rules siblings. But yeah, so a lot of people with this can be like too strict on themselves. But what's so interesting is that you are a Sag moon, which is like the least strict on themselves, like moon, right? So as a cat, like I say with Capricorn moons, it's just like crystallized emotional patterns from past lives that just need to be overcome. Um, and it could be something that runs in the family, right? I see that a lot with my clients. So the more inner work you do, and this is like you leaning into that Cancer side, right? That because the Cancer also needs so much nurturance growing up, right? So yeah, interesting. But yeah, another thing is like people with this are usually quite shy. Um, so overcoming that is really important. And also like having like being like really self-critical too is a big one. Sometimes there's like a voice in their head of like, their parents or one of their parents or someone that, that raised them or that they grew up with that's just like very critical. And it's like throughout their life they just have that voice in their head. Um, so yeah, it's all about just like positive reinforcements and learning to just like trust and leaving your comfort zone. And that opens everything up in terms of relationships too. But the biggest thing I think for this is just getting good at like being vulnerable and showing other people your deep emotions and how you truly feel. And that can really turn everything around. um and then as a parent, if you have kids, like that's really strong because and just overall, Saturn on the moon makes someone become very emotionally mature. And they're very accountable, they're very responsible, um and wise. So yeah, and that's the whole goal of it, right? So you have to kind of go through like an emotional kind of tough, it's not easy growing up, but like it gets everything with Saturn gets way better with time. And then you really fully get to enjoy like the highest energy of the highest manifestation um, of the Sag energy, right? Which is very linked to your North Node and Aries journey, right? Both fire signs about just adventure and just going and doing it, whatever it is, whatever is interesting to you, just um, going towards that. So, so you also have Venus square Saturn, um, and square the Moon, but I'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, so like you understand like with the sometimes people I think more men, but woman, because with women it's easier to um share your emotions with your friends growing up. It's more like normalized, right? So that's just really important. And I think a lot of women who have like Capricorn moons or who have like Saturn on their moon, they'll have an easier time with that than men. Now, but yeah, with the Cancer part, with all this fire, it can't be ignored, right? It can't be ignored. And it's like, as a fellow, water sign Sag, I think that like it's like about like the traveling and all that, like that kind of like growth, you know? Like it doesn't always have to be physical. Like it can be done at a distance, right? You can like it could be like I always say travel physically or metaphorically. Because one I guess I would say shadow of this is like almost like a hungry ghost type energy, right? Where you're never, not you, like when someone who might have this in their chart might never be satisfied, right? The grass is always greener type energy, just want to keep going, just want, like, I need, like not never being satisfied with what is. So it's really important as a Sag moon to learn to really just be happy um with whatever is, right? With whatever is in your life, and um to just accept the reality. Um but yeah, along those lines, just never, like with this fire, just like, whatever it is that kind of lights your fire, literally, like, not literally, yeah, you know what I mean. Whatever lights your fire, that is what you should pursue, because in past lives, like I said earlier, the tendency is to, maybe be very indecisive and not firm enough, which, leads you to not living as fulfilling of a life and not finding out enough about yourself through that, right? You learn so much via adventure. So I think your chart is speaking to that. So, um, but yeah, in terms of like assertiveness, any Aries rising is going to be very assertive. Um, and I think it does help with the Saturn on the moon, because Aries risings typically are not afraid to say how they feel. Um, and it makes Mars the chart ruler, and Mars is over there in Capricorn. So, right on the midheaven. Damn, what a Mars placement. So, and it's retrograde. So interesting. Wow. Um, and it's kind of, it's square the nodes, like 10 degrees, less than 10 degrees. I use big orbs for the nodes. Um, so what I make of that, and then the nodes are also, yeah, square the sun. Hmm. So basically, like when your sun is square the nodes, it creates like someone who is not meant to follow in their parents' footsteps in any way. Like they're truly meant to just do their own thing, you know? Um, it's like you know, essential part of your current life energy and purpose, which is your sun, is to resolve issues related to that. And what I see when I look at that, it's very obvious. It's like because like the moon and sun in Cancer in the fourth is also about the need to develop that spiritual relationship with yourself, that emotional relationship with yourself, right, in this lifetime. So that has been sidelined in past lives, right? A lot of your core individuality has been sidelined because of this potential tendency with relationships. So yeah, basically this lifetime is like the critical one for resolving a lot of unresolved material around, based on what I was saying. And it creates kind of like echoes of like the Joseph Campbell hero's journey. Um where basically it's like, creating and maintaining uh personal, very a vision that's very personal and unique to you, um and not following anyone, right? So a lot of people with this, um one second, sorry. Maybe let the cats go. I'm recording. So yeah, basically, there's a big challenge to kind of individuate. Um, and with the moon where it was, right? With the moon in that position with Saturn, I could see how, it would be difficult, if there was like, very critical parenting or something like that. And then, with Mars, right? So then Mars in Capricorn, such a strong Mars placement. I was saying yesterday how, like, if I had to change one of my big six, the big three, and then Venus, Mercury, Mars, I'd probably go for like a Capricorn Mars. I have no Earth in my chart. I wouldn't change any, but like if I had to, it'd probably be like Aquarius, Mars, then Capricorn, because it's such a great Mars sign. I love it. It's so good in terms of like getting, like people with Mars and Capricorn, like they get to where they need to get. Like once they put their mind to something, like they are just locked in, and it's right on your midheaven. But when Mars is square in retrograde square the nodes, though, that's very interesting because that speaks directly to what I've been saying about how, in past lives, you like I said, Mars is assertiveness. How if you act, do you act in your best interest? Do you have your own power? Like, do you act in the best interest are you in your power, basically? So Mars retrograde is someone who either overdid the Mars or underdid the Mars. And based on what I'm seeing, it's definitely an underdid, right? Um, so you have the retrograde Mars in this lifetime. The first 30 years or so, kind of like the Saturn return, like, until you like kind of mature and grow up and stuff. It can really make like that. It can make someone like have like a ton of inner activity, if that makes sense, right? Like there's a lot going on inside, but sometimes it can be a little bit frustrating. Um, it can be a little bit frustrating, and it's meant to make that person really analyze their actions and analyze like how they want to act. Like what's the right balance of like overacting versus underacting, right? So the fact that it's in Capricorn, that you have all this fire energy going forward, you're getting pushed forward by this fire. It's really like an invitation, like life is inviting you, God, whatever you want to call it, is inviting you to have some fun in this lifetime. But that Mars placement, and the fact that it squares the nodes is very interesting. So one thing about it when it squares the nodes, is that the like there's unresolved material related to to the instinctual will and desires, right? And there can be like unresolved anger, unresolved sexual feelings, um some past life trauma, perhaps, like around like something like sexual or something physical. um but a lot of times, yeah, there can be like just this anger, this past life anger, right? So it's really important to really like analyze, like, okay, is that happening? Also, as someone that has fire, it's very important for you to have like a physical outlet, right? Fire people, they need to get that out. They just need to, right? So it's really important to understand, like, if you do have any hidden anger, it's like the whole thing with resentments, right? Like when you have a resentment towards someone, it's like drinking poison and hoping that they get sick from it. It doesn't work. Um, and yeah, it's really like it speaks of like, situations where the will has become almost co-opted in some fashion. Okay, am I back? I just lost the signal. Let me just check. Okay. Okay. So where was I? Yeah, I was just saying how, what was I saying? Yeah, so like the person can feel like very lost. And sometimes it's like, like where like excessive like dominance, uh, you know, from someone else, could have, in this case from, from someone else, or, someone really acting for you in a sense, right? Could have really distorted your soul's, intention in a past life or past lives. And really, ultimately, it goes back to the Aries North Node, like an unmet need for independence, right? Which can have led to suppressed anger. Um, but then that unmet need can also express itself as a source of paradox in relationships, because the freedom, or whereby the freedom to grow with another is wanted, but then there's also a potential subconscious fear of entrapment, um, when things get close, which can prevent that, um, need from being fully, fulfilled. So that's something to really look at. Um, but the fact that it's, in Capricorn and it's on the midheaven is going to give tremendous drive towards, just achieving anything in career. So it's another massive signifier. The Mars is your chart ruler, right? Rules Aries, your ascendant, and it's on an angle. So you have a super strong Mars. So, I think, yeah, you definitely, once you get into something, I feel like you probably, can really, really go all out. Um, so okay. And then Mars is also unaspected. Besides, yeah, it's unaspected. I mean, like by planets, yeah. Wait, wait. No, it's not. Why is it not showing me that? Oh no, I'm tripping. No, it's not. It's too far from that. Yeah. So, and yeah, I guess no, it's square. It's square the ascendant. But yeah, in terms of planets, there's nothing. But yeah. So I think that, yeah. So you just would, like, Mars on Mars culminating just gives someone a tremendous, ability to, yeah, basically just like put a ton of energy into their career, and whatever their dharma. So like I always talk about how Sagittarius moon people, they're meant, Sagittarian people are here to discover truth. And I said this a lot of times. This is another reason why I didn't want to do the reading yesterday, is that, if you have like two different people who, like, basically your quote unquote truth defines what your dharma is, right? Like if I'm someone who believes everything the mainstream media says and everything that I learned in school and doesn't question anything, I'm going to have a lot different career choice of what I feel is important than if I was who I am now, is an example, right? Someone who's deeply spiritual and who, uh, questions everything and thinks that a lot of shit is bullshit. Or knows, actually. So yeah, like that's kind of an example to show that as you're always evolving your worldview, um, you're also updating what you think is meaningful work, what you think, is meaningful for you to do. And I don't like to use the word career for because dharma can be, it's not just what you do to make money, right? That's not career. That's not dharma is like what your biggest like goals are here, right? On like a more outer world level. So, I think that you have tremendous energy, and be able to work really, really hard and get to the top at whatever you do. Really do. Um, so then you've got your Mercury's in Leo retrograde. So you have Mars. So you were born when Mars and Mercury were in retrograde. That's very interesting. So Mercury retrograde is super interesting. Say interesting again, because just like how Mercury retrograde is when we experience it, it can make the more abstract, the more right brain stuff easier. The people who have this natally, which is about 15 or 20% of people. But then I think it's like 15%. But then like sometimes people with Mercury retrograde, like they can, so this actually goes really makes sense to me because your Chiron's in Gemini, right? So Chiron represents where you have pain. Um, and in Gemini, it's someone who, maybe like received some message early on from parents or school or whatever that they basically led them to doubt their own way of thinking and their own intelligence usually, right? So, with the Mercury retrograde, that would make perfect sense if it was true that because like a lot of people with Mercury retrograde, like they get thrown into this very Capricornian school system, and yeah, your Mercury's in Leo, but still, they're like sometimes retrograde Mercury's like they can be overly analytical, ruminate a lot, overthink things, and just be really, really good at like the highly abstract. But then when it comes to like I don't know, like schoolwork, like they can have difficulties and just learn in different ways sometimes. So sometimes they and they're very imaginative, it's really because the mind is turned inward, right? So they have like a very rich inner life, but then sometimes it's a little bit hard to, oh my gosh, just have my eyes closed and Esmond, my cat, just like touched me. That was really Esmond, why did you get me on my flow? Anyways, yeah, so that's kind of like Mercury retrograde is like that, right? So whenever I parent, I'm doing like kids charts with parents, like I always tell them like I'll go deep into like, like make sure that your kid like, you do a lot of creative stuff, and if they have any trouble at school, just know that like, they're not stupid, like they're not like, if they do have trouble, it could be very well more linked to the fact that the education system is not made for people with Mercury retrograde natally. Also on that point, there's some interesting thing that happens to people at Mercury retrograde where they can sometimes project past life identities onto people in their current life in order to try to solve those past life issues. And this is just like I'm not positive about what I'm about to say, but like I feel like people with Mercury retrograde sometimes, like let's say like they reincarnate with someone, right? Sometimes I feel like they might be talking to the past life versions of those same souls. Because I've seen this quite a bit. My brother has it and several other people I know. And I just like talked about it with people, and it's like, isn't that kind of trippy? Like if you're like with like your, you know, someone in your family, someone really close to you, and you know, you're talking to a different life version of them on an unconscious level. So it's just something to think about. But yeah, so um I think that yeah, overthinking can be like a big one, difficulty of that. So just like, the more creative outlets you have as a Mercury retrograde, the better. That's like really where things get good when you have creative outlets. Um, so it's trying Saturn too, so that's really good for intelligence actually. So that's part of the Chiron and Gemini journey is to learn to trust your own thought processes, right? And learn that you are intelligent. And then you're able to really help other people in that type of way as well. So yeah, that's interesting to me. That's very interesting. That link right there. And yeah, like a Mercury and Leo just overall is quite proud. Like they like to have fun when they learn. Um, and yeah, they're usually good communicators when they're able to open up with the retrograde. Um, and very proud of like what they've learned, you know, there's lots of pride and they take pride in their learning. So Venus and Virgo is interesting. Um, so in terms of like love energy, you have Venus and Virgo, your Sag moon, your Sag moon is exactly conjunct your Juno. Juno is like an asteroid that represents your perfect mate. So, I mean, with love, it's kind of simple, right? It's like A, you know, you need someone who, you know, I would say who can definitely speak to, you know, the water and the fire side. Um, but like mainly, you know, getting away from that past life pattern, right? Getting away from that past life pattern and truly being in a relationships where you're able to say no, where you're able to like to really have like a lot of like, you know, the good thing about Libra is like the high Libra is like balance and peace, right? And you'll have very karmic partners as well. And really like yeah, you want that balance, but not at the expense of your independence. So still being able to keep up your individuality within relationships is definitely a big goal, I would say. As a Sag Moon, you need a lot of freedom. You need a lot of space, most likely. You might also, as a Sag Juno, be interested from people with, you know, partners from different cultures. Um, so then we have the Venus and Virgo. Very interesting. And it's square Saturn. Um, trine Neptune, sextile Pluto. So, you know, that in itself, um, well, first of all, the trine with Neptune is like extreme creativity. It's like being able to blend imagination of Neptune. I always think of the Van Gogh painting, where like if you think of like the inspiration, the imagination, I know there's a lot of them. The Starry Night one or whatever it's called. You have to have like the imagination, inspiration to think of that. That's the Neptune, and then the Venus is the actual painting, you know, or the actual like applying of the art, application of the art. So that's like one of the most creative aspects in astrology. Now, because yeah, those two are working together. But now, you know, in terms of love, like Venus and Virgo is usually very practical. And they want and they're you know their love language a lot of times is like based on like the things they do, they're willing to do. But sometimes they can have like an overly distorted view of like they like overly idealistic when it comes to partners. And sometimes like nothing is ever good enough. Um, and they can become like there can be like this like quick like, oh my God, this person's like perfect. And then as fast as that went, then it becomes like the opposite, right? So so it's like, and then when you add the square of Saturn, that brings up the idea of perfectionism, right? Um, so Venus is not just your love language. It's true. At its essence, Venus is what you value, and it's about self-love. So when it's square Saturn, it can create lots of difficulties around loving the self and around truly valuing the self. Um, and getting stuck in that Libra South node would be getting stuck in allowing relationships, the karmic tendency to allow relationships to define you. But that square, so Venus in Virgo already is like, you know, you have to understand that like no human is perfect. Um, that is just how it is, but like also that the person with that, you know, they're not going to want like even though you do want a partner that you can expand with, probably like a travel buddy, maybe someone from different cultures. I said, but not necessarily, but a lot of people with that do that. But the Virgo part is way more about I want someone I can rely on. I want someone that sees the small things and notices the small things I do, right? Um, and it goes with your Mars and Capricorn too, right? Where this would make someone very good at achieving success, but they have to get and one thing also about the Saturn on the moon, need some water, is that it can there can definitely be some type of conditioning from like the family that leads to like perfectionism. And there's like a lot that's needed, like I was saying, like with that potential like voice in the back of your head, to understand that like whatever you are is enough. You are enough in yourself. So yeah, there's just like that real potential for that disillusionment. And I think that um yeah, the square with Saturn can definitely make vulnerability difficult. Just like with the moon one. And yeah, because with the moon and with the moon square Venus, there's just like usually a struggle for feeling that, for like when it comes to love, or for satisfying like the need for love and affection that one has, right? Because like people with that, like above all, they want loving. They want like drama free, like harmonious love. Um, but sometimes they can become overly reliant on that, right? So like there can be that potential for falling back into that past life trap. So it's like a big thing where you need like people with this, like sometimes, yeah, they will measure their success in life like based on like how they're doing based on like the relationship, you know, based on how much devotion and love they're receiving. And sometimes like they can go to great lengths if single to, you know, try to fill that gap. So there's like a lot of surrender that's needed in that relationship area for this to be successful, right? Because a lot of people with this have like this, yeah, this real constant need for love and affection. But it is good for like, it gives lots of charm, lots of beauty, um, and popularity and stuff. But yeah, sometimes like with this will, yeah, go to great lengths to ensure that they feel that. Sometimes it's like, I don't want to say like one night stands, but like, little relationships that don't have much meaning. Um, so yeah, like just being okay with like, yeah, it can just like make make it hard to find like that level of intimacy and that level of relationship that really satisfies. But like after the Saturn return, things get a lot easier, right? Because the square Saturn, it's very difficult. Because like it just makes yeah, it just creates lots of challenges around finding love. And um oftentimes it's after the Saturn return that things really really get good in that area. And they feel like they're just being denied of that by the universe, right? So, and sometimes it can create like bad habits, laziness, um and just like different sorrows in love, right? And feeling like rejected, and it can make someone like feel very isolated and lonely, like early on especially. But it really, this one is very like however much love you receive from your parents is like the game changer here, especially for this one, the father, right? um because someone with this would definitely have needed like a lot of like encouragement and boost to move forward, for their self-esteem. But if there's like lots of criticism or even abuse of any kind, it just kind of can lead to depression and just like always seeking, right? So it's like very important to, yeah, be okay with being alone. Not that you're gonna be, not that, and you might not be alone right now, but just you get what I'm saying. But squares are meant to be overcome and turned into assets, right? The strengths. So um, it's all like I was saying, like this one is also big time around, the inner work you do, self-love, and really looking at the negative, any kind of negative, like, messaging that you have, like self-limiting beliefs and any kind of negative, like internal messages, right? Um, so it's all about like kind of, like, erasing that and kind of like recoding with like affirmations, like positive affirmations, and just like anything that it takes to kind of project that more like positive self-image. So it's like gaining confidence. And sometimes people with this, they'll kind of hide their affection and miss out on opportunities for real love because of different fears that they'll be like abandoned, right? Um, so yeah, sometimes there's definitely like kind of trial and error type energy here, but and that's one thing about being a Cancer is that there's that potential for they say about the Cancer crab, once it gets hurt for the first time, it crawls back into its shell and doesn't want to be vulnerable again. So it's being able to like understand that everything was part of this process, and overcoming whatever difficulties are there, and learning to trust again. So yeah, the big thing with the Venus and Virgo is just being able to, yeah, to not to like get past like any kind of, the self-criticism that one might have for the self and all the stuff I talked about. um and then just like, like having that more like realist, like having like a very realistic approach. So with relationships, yeah, it adds that need for someone solid, who's not just who's trying to really build something, right? So moving forward, let's see here. Then Mercury's also square Pluto, so that can be a tough one too. I didn't really see that one um for Mercury. So going back to Mercury a little bit, but basically that can make one, so Mercury, it can kind of bring a lot of darkness to one's thoughts. And sometimes it can make someone have like very strong opinions that then subject them to criticism. Um and like lots of like very intense and mentally challenging interactions with other people. But it gives like a very like profound, deep nature. So like anything that's like surface level won't really be for you. Um, but oftentimes it's like early on they have some kind of like, very dark, it's like a crisis in the family or something like that shows them the darker side of humanity and really impacts their worldview. Um, so a lot of times it's like about not identifying so much with your thoughts and your beliefs. And that's one of the shadows of Sag Moon, is that sometimes like they can be like very dogmatic, like this is what I believe, everyone has to believe it. So it's like understanding people like come to their own version of truth at their own time. But this does give a lot like deep intellect and lots of street smarts. um that's all about like how like people can get very defensive when they have this. So like when there's like a conflict, like how these ideas are communicated and not being like forceful. So it's all about like leaning into that South Node in Libra with like the diplomatic style of communication. Um, and also it makes it so like your ideas and your worldview go through like these big death, rebirths, and transformations. So it's like the whole updating thing, right? Um, so yeah. So then, okay, we think, okay, so Jupiter rules your well, Jupiter rules your Sag moon. So it's in the 12th house in Pisces. So that is like someone who's just super deep spiritually, right? Who has just this real spiritual depth to them. and who's able to, you know, literally like be a teacher, healer. Like also in the 12th house, it speaks to having like lots of spiritual protection, and it makes it so like the esoteric, occult, whatever, right? Um, all these kind of the gates to the unknown are unlocked to someone who has this, right? So that's pretty neat. And I always think of it like having like a lantern or like a flashlight in these really kind of dark areas, and really being able to like almost be like psychic when it comes to like understanding um the undercurrents and the zeitgeist, and like just like what's really happening um in the world, what's truly going on. And like just really being able to like feel the undercurrents with people. And yeah, it's quite neat, quite neat. So yeah, I think like I love Jupiter in 12th because it just you have even during dark times you have this like ability to go within yourself, retrograde too, yeah, and really like find like very philosophical, and like really find like that well of optimism during like the even dark times, and just continue to keep going. um and yeah, it's really good for like kind of the unseen, like lots of like light and positivity with the unseen forces. So yeah, it's lots of protection. So there could be some clashes with siblings. I don't know if you have siblings, but either like in the early schooling, early like growing up, just like some pain. So that's probably related to like the Mercury stuff, feeling misunderstood perhaps. And also there's like a big need to like watch out for that whole grass is green on the other side type mentality of like nothing is ever good enough. And for things like like lying, um stretching the truth, like it's that's just one of the potentials for the Black Lilith in Gemini. um so yeah, I just think that like sometimes that energy can be too, it can like just like go to too, like go very far in trying to prove its point, kind of with like the square of Pluto and Mercury. So through like creative writing, journaling, things like that are excellent because you lack air in your chart. So it's really important to like also just like have like lots of conversations with people who might think differently than you, and really just trying to understand like how people become, how people like, I'll give you an example. Like when I grew up in the West Coast of the US. So like everyone was very, democratic and whatnot, and had like a certain view of like conservative people, right? And I was never like political or like, like with any party or anything like that. But one day, this guy I went to school with, he like posted about like, I was just like very curious about how conservative people think. And that kind of, so when I saw that, I was like, that's such a good idea. Like I also don't know. So like I started watching content, not like conservative content, but I started like just out of curiosity. And I still do this to this day. Like I'll watch things that I don't even agree with, just to see like, okay, wow, that's interesting how that person hit that person's entire existence and all their experiences and all of their karma and whatever like led them to have this kind of these kinds of opinions, right? So just being very open-minded in that sense, right? um so then, having part of fortune and Uranus up there in the ninth in Sag is just speaking about how you're at your best when you're in your flow state, when you're on the adventure, when you're growing, when when your worldview is expanding and your truth is expanding, and you have new teachings from all different types of philosophical backgrounds and cultural backgrounds, all that. And the Uranus in the ninth would actually be very interesting because it would kind of counter the Saturn there, and it would actually lead to lots of very interesting teachers coming in, um, lots of very interesting experiences traveling. And also like overall, it would give someone a worldview like growing up that would be, probably quite individualistic, right? And different than the people that they most likely grew up around. If there's any like tradition pushed on you, you'd probably reject it and want your own, work very hard to find your own philosophy and have this like intuitive feeling, like intuitively guided, like that Jupiter in the 12th house also helping there. Understand like there's more, and that Mercury square Pluto, that's where it comes in to understand that no, there's more. There's more than meets the eye, right? There's more to life, to existence than just what we're told. So yeah, it's really nice. I love seeing that there. Um, so Pluto would be is in the eighth, and whole signs would be in the seventh in Placidus. So like the seventh, it just kind of speaks of like how relationships can be kind of a battleground. Um, and yeah, like just that, people who have that, like a lot of times they have to get past like a toxic like cycle in relationships, and really learn to be, um yeah, like I said before, like happy alone, and able to like look at any kind of cycle that exists there. And sometimes a lot of like the underlying issues is, obviously like in relationships you get mirrored, right? So a lot of the stuff that needs to be healed, you'll get the clues in the relationships. But it also gives someone like this amazing ability to transform their relationship life, right? In a way that fits them better. And then in the eighth, the whole signs, that's just the ultimate like need to go deep within and transform, um, on such a profound and deep level, right? Um, it's a natural house for Pluto, eighth house. So that's someone who just doesn't want to, who really wants to like do the shadow work in this lifetime and confront, the parts of themselves that aren't necessarily that easy to confront. Um, so, really challenging the pre-existing sense of identity, in any like, you know, um, it's like a deep confrontation with like the reality and the truth of who you are. So it's the ultimate kind of shadow work. And basically here, the dilemma is the discrepancy between the ego's wants, desires, and the soul's, right? So what the ego wants, what the soul needs. Um, and that struggle can persist until the person starts asking himself, okay, what do I want based on my conditioning, based on my ego, and what do I truly need, right? And usually, the soul wants that deep expansion and empowerment, through new knowledge, right? New ways, through new ways of deeply relating to other people and the world. But then the ego, would require like security through things that are familiar, right? And sometimes there'll be like this battle for defending its own comfort zone from the very power of transformation, which is needed. So that's the whole surrender piece. Um, and it can bring very intense relationships, right? That can even become like an obsession. And they can even become like a very big like power struggle relationships unless there's like you know some surrender there, and really really looking at how things are. So, and then the vertex is right there. So Scorpio eighth house vertex, it's really through these very deep Plutonian relationships and experiences that one truly finds their doorway to higher awareness, like through the unknown parts of life, the mysteries of life, the unspoken of, undiscovered, you know, studies of life after death, esoteric, occult, all that stuff. Um, anything that's underground can really you know, guide you. But it's really a lot. I think of it a lot of like what everything I just said with the Pluto, the soul versus ego, like that being like where the biggest expansion is. So let's see. So yeah, Ceres is in Virgo. So there's definitely like go back to my face. Where's my face? And for a sec, I'm gonna run to the washroom really quickly. I'm gonna pause this. All right, I've returned. Um, so yeah, Ceres in Virgo in the sixth. It just speaks to like like feeling like lots of nurturance when you uh care for others. Like it's really like great for service. But also when you care for yourself, like on like that daily routine type level, like that is very good for you, and you're very good at helping others feel kind of nourished on like a daily level. So like people who have that, like that's like someone who's and that's another thing about sixth house Venus also is that there's like lots of like I know they say this before, like relationships where there's like a karmic balance that needs to be had, right? So like um when you can be of service for your profession or whatever you're doing or just in some type of way, that's when a lot opens up, right? And a lot of like the energy with love, hey Mika, with relationships and whatnot can become a lot smoother. But yeah, just Ceres and Virgo, they like to be of service to humanity. So and they like when other people help them kind of perfect their skills in different areas. So yeah, and feeling nourished when things are clean and the diet's good and all that. Pets even Venus sixth house. Mika remind me. Venus sixth house is very good for pets. It makes someone like love pets and probably like have very beautiful relationships with pets. So happy that Mika reminded me of that. And also the fact that your Mercury's in the fifth means that you'll be very good when you're um investing yourself in your creative outlets. When you're headed in a creative direction, it's very important. You'll like to like have fun with your work and potentially turn your work into have work and play be one of the same. So so yeah, also like having Eris rising, Vesta rising. I was talking about at the start, but um, Vesta rising is someone who can really easily embody their calling, like when it comes to like the work that they're meant to do. And sometimes like their work involves like some type of sacrifice, like to a higher calling. Um, and yeah, like really good for having like those routines and practices that help recharge you and strengthen your connection to the divine. Um, and yeah, someone who can just be very devoted to their work. And in Aries, it's like probably better to be working. I mean, you can definitely be like working for other people. Like Venus in sixth house is very good for having like a pleasant workspace and work life. But I think there's also like a lot of entrepreneurial energy that you have for sure. So it could be like working for and it's very diverse. Like there's like in terms of careers, like it's pretty much anything's open, right? So but Eris on the ascendant, Eris rising it just makes it important to be able, like I said, to have a physical outlet to sweat, whether it's boxing, I don't even know, like whatever it is to get that energy out. Um, which is very good for like the Mars retrograde too. And then it makes the things, the goals, ambitions, and all that way easier to kind of pin down. So then the Palace is in the fifth house in Leo. So that just makes someone very, very good with like artistically like talented, very creative minds, um, where they can, really focus on any kind of creative work. And yeah, it's just someone who likes to like probably play with words, like wordsmith type energy. So that's interesting. And let's pop this open. Actually, why is my AC not going? All right, let's see what we got. So karma, the asteroid karma rising. So that just speaks to, this life, really, really wanting to understand your karma, really, really wanting to understand, like this life being very ruled by karma. Um, with the sun square the south node, the nodes, that's just like I was saying, like such an important lifetime for your individuality and for finding that, the real underpinnings of your personality and what really gets you going. And then you have Sirche on the sun, and that is one of the three asteroids related to witchery. So, like a one of the three witch asteroids, right? And so, like anything with like like witch stuff, like potions and herbs and magic and all that, anything esoteric like could play a huge part of your life, and there could be like some real um talents that you can discover within yourself because it's close to the IC. So it could be like from like the bloodline from past lives that you kind of discover. That's really interesting. Okay. So yeah, definitely like a real potential for like great talent when it comes to words and creativity, writing could be like a great, yeah, writing could be like a great tool for you, like a great practice for you to open yourself up energetically. And let's see here. So yeah, it's also just really important to like anything legal, anything involving contracts, to make sure that um that you're careful and make sure that everything is done correctly and all that with respect to that. Let me see this. All right. And one other thing. Mika, what are you doing? Stop, Mika. Mika. So yeah, you're really, really meant to explore and to just act based off of based on what you want to do. Like I said, it's been held back in past lives. So this life, it's okay to be selfish. It's okay to do what you want to do. You know, like in our society, like we get taught, you know, that we have like the responsibility for this, the responsibility for that, and it just can go so far, um, to where it's just like there's no energy left for the self and for self development. So I think your chart is like a real testament to Fedix. Stop, you don't go on my computer too. It's a real testament to, yeah, the need to follow that Aries North node, that independence and just that real, allowing yourself to just have that fun. You deserve it karmically. So yeah, so that is it. Thank you so much. So let me know if you want to do. Let me just check to see. So yeah, you have the follow already. So yeah, just let me know if you want to add the current astrology to that. Thank you for your patience. cats are going crazy. And yeah, and if you want to just only stick with a follow-up, just let me know when you're ready and we can set that up. All right. Thank you. Ciao, ciao.